All right, let's talk about Faith No More. When you hear that name, I bet one thing instantly pops into your head, right? A fish flopping around on a carpet. That rap metal masterpiece that was absolutely everywhere. But you know what? That's just page one of a much, much crazier story.
So, are they the ultimate 90s one-hit wonder? I mean, you hear that all the time, because Epic was just, well, it was epic, but is that really their whole story? Not even a little bit. So let's get into what really happened with a band that was anything but simple.
So here they are. This is the version of the band that took over the world. But to really get them, you have to rewind. You have to go way back to a beginning so messy and so completely unstable, it's honestly a miracle they ever got this far at all.
Yeah, before all the fame, before the platinum records, there was just chaos. And for this band, instability wasn't just some phase they went through. No, you could say it was pretty much baked into their DNA right from the very beginning.
I mean, you want to talk about an identity crisis, just look at the name changes. They started out as Sharp Young Men, which was kind of a joke about all the elegant new wave bands. Then they became Faith No Man. It wasn't until '83, after they'd kicked out their singer, that they finally landed on Faith No More, literally because the man was no more.
And it wasn't just the name that kept changing. The lineup was a total revolving door. Singers and guitarists came and went constantly. And get this, for a super brief, very weird moment in time, a totally unknown Courtney Love was their lead singer. Yeah, just think about that for a second.
This quote from Billy Gould, the bassist, just says it all, doesn't it? Their singer at the time, Chuck Mosley, was getting more and more erratic. We're talking about allegedly punching his own bandmate on stage, falling asleep at their album release party, stuff like that. So the band did the only thing they could think of, they all quit, and then just reformed the next day without him. Classic.
And this is where everything flips. The band finds a new frontman, this 20-year-old kid named Mike Patton from some weirdo band called Mr. Bungle, and by doing that, they basically stumble backwards into becoming global superstars.
The whiplash must have been insane. Mike Patton joins the band, and literally 2 weeks later, 2 weeks, he's written all the lyrics for what would become their massive breakout album, The Real Thing. They went from a local band with a little buzz to an absolute, undeniable MTV juggernaut.
And the numbers? Well, they don't lie. The Real Thing sold over 4 million copies around the world. Epic was a top 10 hit. They got a Grammy nomination. By every single metric, they had made it. So what do you do next? You make the same album all over again and cash in, right? Nope, not these guys.
Instead of cashing in, they gave the world Angel Dust in 1992. And this album? This was their rebellion. It was way darker. It was weirder. It was so much more experimental. A critic called it confounding, and you just know the band loved that. They were actively trying to escape the box that Epic had built around them.
And what happened was fascinating. Right here in the US, sales totally tanked. The fans who just wanted another Epic were completely confused. But everywhere else in the world, the album was a monster hit. It even outsold The Real Thing in a bunch of countries. So the artistic gamble worked, but it also started to show the real cracks forming inside the band.
You'd think all that success and creative freedom would bring them together, right? Well, it did the exact opposite. It just brought more conflict, fracturing the band and putting them on a one-way path to a total breakdown. So the first major casualty of this new direction was their longtime guitarist, Jim Martin. He absolutely hated the sound of Angel Dust. Now, he says he quit, they say he was fired, but either way, he was out, and it just exposed how deeply divided the band had become.
And after Jim was gone, that guitar spot became like a cursed position. First, Patton's bandmate from Mr. Bungle came in, recorded the next album, and then quit before the tour. Then, they hired their keyboard tech to play guitar. And then they replaced him. It was a total mess, a clear sign of a band that was just completely falling apart.
Ouch. By the time they put out their 1997 album, Album of the Year, the critics were just savage. Rolling Stone called them irrelevant. The very same band that helped kick off the 90s now felt like a total afterthought at the end of it. And so, yeah, in April of 1998, that was it. It was over. The band put out a statement saying the breakup was mutual and that everyone was going to go do their own thing. The chaos, it seemed, had finally won.
For more than 10 years, that's where the story ended. But you know, with a band like Faith No More, you can never really say never. Turns out, there was another chapter left to write.
Then in 2009, after all these rumors had been swirling around, the impossible actually happened. They were back. The band got back together and launched a Second Coming tour, playing to these huge festival crowds all across the globe.
And look, this wasn't just some nostalgia trip to play the hits. They actually released a fantastic new album in 2015 called Sol Invictus. But in true Faith No More fashion, the story gets complicated again. Tours were canceled in 2021 due to Mike Patton's mental health struggles, and today, well, their future is a big question mark all over again.
So when you look back at all of it, the constant chaos, the breakups, the reunions, the reinventions, what's the big takeaway? Why does this band, with its one monster hit, still matter so much?
Well, for one thing, their influence is just undeniable. You've got Chris Novoselic from Nirvana saying they paved the way for them. And then there's the entire generation of nu metal bands that blew up in the late 90s. We're talking Korn, Slipknot, System of a Down. They all owe a huge debt to the sound that Faith No More created.
And I mean, you can't get much clearer than this quote from Corey Taylor of Slipknot. He flat out says that if he hadn't seen them perform Epic on MTV, he wouldn't even be a musician today. Think about that. That's a legacy.
Bottom line, they were true pioneers. They smashed genres together that had no business being in the same room. Funk, metal, hip-hop, punk, you name it. And in doing that, they basically carved out a whole new space in music we now call alternative metal. They didn't just play the game. They completely changed the rules. So in the end, who were they? Were they these brilliant pioneers who changed rock music? Were they just professional troublemakers who loved messing with their audience? Or were they just the architects of their own destruction, a band whose inner chaos was both their greatest strength and their fatal flaw? The answer, as with everything Faith No More, is probably, yeah, all of the above.